This is the tale of Alfredo, who works out every day in the park. He happened upon something on a day of destiny that not only profoundly affected him emotionally, but also completely changed his course in life. You will experience hope, sadness, decision-making, and, in the end, being forced to make a sacrifice while reading this narrative. Alfredo was a 40-year-old unmarried man at the time. Living alone, he continued to process the hurt he felt from a broken relationship. Following years of unrelenting arguments, Alfredo and his spouse made the decision to split. Their inability to conceive was one of the primary causes of the divorce. After 10 years, the marriage collapsed, leaving Alfredo alone himself and overcome with feelings of hopelessness and failure. Alfredo considered being a parent regularly. He realized that doing this was among the most selfless things someone could do. A parent must be fully dedicated to raising their children, putting up a great deal of effort and time to help shape their character. Even though he was losing out on this chance, the notion of this obligation frequently overpowered him. At the city, Alfredo held a job at an office. Although he didn't particularly enjoy his work, it was a means of supporting himself. Nonetheless, he enjoyed going for a run every morning at 7 o'clock. He would run in the park for 10 kilometers. This offered him a feeling of direction. After that, he would go back to his house, shower, and start working. For him, leading a healthy lifestyle was crucial. He tried a few different things to become pregnant, including this one with his wife. He took care of his physical health to make sure he wasn't a factor in their failure to conceive. He was a nice spouse to his ex-wife as well. Alfredo was deeply troubled by the fact that his wife remarried shortly after the divorce and became pregnant. He thought he was a bad man. He needed a considerable amount of time to completely accept becoming a father before he could truly open his heart. He now needed to process his feelings of disappointment and failure. One of Alfredo's most important days ever began as what seemed like any other ordinary day. Even when he started his usual run at 7 o'clock, there seemed to be an odd sense of expectancy in his soul. He was simply overcome with an odd sense about today. His lungs were assaulted by the sharp morning air. It was an abnormally quiet morning. Alfredo listened to the stillness for a little period. He heard an odd sound just as he was ready to start his run with his headphones on. Thinking at first that it was a bird, he wanted to put on his headphones once again. Running gave him the opportunity to be alone with his thoughts, so he developed the practice of blocking out sounds that may distract him. This time, from not too far away, he heard a wail. It sounded like the wounded, stranded howl of an animal, but Alfredo sensed something wasn't quite right. With a sense of urgency, he raced towards the play area upon hearing the sound of sobbing. There, amongst the play area's equipment, Alfredo discovered a small, defenseless infant bundled in a blanket. The infant, looking pale and chilly, was having difficulty breathing and growing quieter. The infant seemed to be clinging to the thought that its cry would draw attention and allow it to survive. Alfredo began to cry and seep tears down his cheeks. He was overcome with intense sympathy for this defenseless infant. Alfredo quickly and cautiously scooped up the infant and drove to the closest hospital. He kept praying that the child would make it through. The infant may have perished if Alfredo hadn't intervened. He had been at the ideal location at the ideal moment. Upon observing the infant, the medical professionals realized he required immediate attention. In addition, they reported the abandoned infant to the police right away. Upon discovering an abandoned infant, feelings are typically intense. In addition to having to cope with the intense emotions surrounding the finding, Alfredo became entangled in the legal maze of having to explain how and when he discovered the infant, rule out the possibility that he was abandoned. He found it incomprehensible that someone could forsake a defenseless, helpless newborn infant, much less be suspected of being complicit. Alfredo enthusiastically inquired about the baby's condition when he returned to the hospital after being cleared and providing evidence to the police. Due to complications with his lungs and other organs, the tiny boy's prognosis was uncertain for the medical community. Alfredo experienced a strong emotional reaction because he felt accountable. A million pieces broke in his heart. His goal was to give the infant every chance of survival. The daily morning jog turned into an early hospital visit. He had to pull himself away to go to work after that hour. He would go back to the hospital as soon as the workday was over to see how the child was doing. Alfredo was designated as the emergency contact by the hospital because the infant had no family. The medical costs paid in attempting to save the boy's life were assumed by Alfredo. As they learned to know and appreciate Alfredo, the hospital staff developed a deep admiration for his selfless dedication. Now Alfredo had a fresh cause for being. The young child who fought for his life was given the name Eduardo. The youngster didn't exhibit any evidence of improvement in the first week. He was dependent on life-supporting equipment and frail. Feeling powerless, Alfredo could only hope Eduardo would struggle to survive. The tale spread across the city. Every day, members of the media visited the hospital to provide updates on Alfredo and Eduardo. Though the mother who had abandoned her kid was publicly condemned, Alfredo was commended for his wonderful gesture. Alfredo pondered over and over. What caused the mother to leave her defenseless baby behind? He was aware that this abandonment had to have been the consequence of trying circumstances. He once noticed a girl in a school uniform sitting on a bench in front of the hospital as he was approaching the facility. Observing the agony and distress on her countenance, he was certain that this had to be Eduardo's young mother. He took a seat next to the girl in silence and struck up a conversation. He informed her that while he did not condemn her behavior, he did want her to understand that she had put the life of an entirely defenseless and innocent infant at peril. Even though things in life might be challenging, she didn't have to give up on her child. Alfredo proposed to accompany her to the infant. The girl broke down in tears, expressing deep regret for her self-centered action. She expressed her gratitude to Alfredo for saving her kid when she was unable to handle the circumstances. Although she felt guilty about what she had done, she lacked the strength to see her child or accept the repercussions of her actions. She hoped her child would grow up in a secure household. The girl wept as she departed, and Alfredo maintained her privacy. Her hope that Alfredo might provide the kid with the fulfilling life he deserved echoed in his ears. Although Alfredo hoped Eduardo would live, he did not believe he would make a suitable father. Alfredo received a call from the hospital early one morning. The nurse informed Alfredo that the baby had opened his eyes, began breathing on his own, and was much better. Despite her initial misgivings, she was ready for the worst. When he arrived at the hospital in a hurry, they told him Eduardo had left the woods. As soon as he received Eduardo in his arms, he knew that his decision to adopt and nurture him as his own son had been reinforced in his heart. Despite the challenges of the legal procedure, he promised to always remind Eduardo of what a courageous little child he was. It was not always easy to raise the child by himself. Despite the emotional and practical difficulties, Alfredo developed into a committed parent. Little Eduardo turned into a good-hearted adult. He is instilling strong moral principles such as bravery, compassion, and honesty in his own family today. He will always be appreciative of his father's efforts in saving and raising him. In contrast, Alfredo is content with his life, has a loving son and daughter-in-law, and his own grandkids to brighten it. He is a wonderful role model who demonstrates how to live up to the ideals and values he established in his son. This tale is really motivating and has a fantastic conclusion. We sincerely hope you have found this entertaining and that you will become a subscriber to the channel so that you may keep enjoying these touching and motivational moments.